Good afternoon. How is everybody doing? For those of you who may not know me, my name is Renarda Joy, and for the next 30 days, I have committed to giving you tools, tips, and insight for those of you who are new to real estate investing. Now, you've heard my mission. My mission is to shrink the intergenerational wealth gap through real estate investing. I really want to help change the narrative, right? To help change the trajectory of many generations, starting with one generation at a time. Now, if you're just joining us, I use this platform to sound the alarm. We are on day 18. I invite you to go back and listen to those conversations. And if you have any questions or if you've gotten any value, please feel free to leave it in the comments. Now, as my grandmother would say, if she was still here, Tuesday was her birthday, she would have said, tell me your name, where you from, and how you felt about this dish that she made. But I'm going to say, what value did you get? I want to know what have you gotten so far? Hey, Rosin, I see you here. So today I want to talk about leases. Now, this bears so much repeating, and I want you to say it with me. Do not download the online lease templates. Do not do it. It does not give you the full protection. It's not state specific, nor will it give you the exact need and comfort of a peace of mind that you will want to have. Remember, your lease should be your voice. You should be sitting with an attorney that can sit down and help you draft a particular lease that's going to say everything that you want in there. But let me give you a couple of clauses that I use that you should consider and speak with your attorney about. The first one is a pet clause. Now, remember, depending on your state, you have to find out if you can charge a pet deposit. It acts just like a security deposit. So if the pet has like any stains, odors, or wear and tear, you can use the pet deposit to take care of that. Do we? Yes. So, for example, I had a tenant, and usually you have to check your no-no list with the insurance company. They have a big list of animals and pets that you're not allowed to have, or your insurance is not going to cover it. So obviously I look at my no-no list. The next thing is I normally don't allow pets more than 10 to 12 pounds. I base that off of the square footage of my units because I want to make sure that the pet has enough room, because if they're huge and the apartment is small, chances are it's going to be a lot of wear and tear. So I'll give you a quick story of something that I needed to add to my lease. So again, I had the pet lease, the clause where you can only have 10 to 12 pounds. And remember, 2/3 of society have pets. I have a pet. I have an adorable Yorkie named Kibbles. So I had a tenant. He was like, hey, I have 2 pets, but the 2 of them together was about 10 to 12 pounds. So I didn't have a problem with that. He was living on the first floor. He had access to the backyard. It wasn't a problem. I started getting calls from tenants about dogs barking at night, early in the morning, in the middle of the night. And I could not understand, because when I saw these 2 dogs, they were older dogs. They weren't babies. They were probably 6, 7, 12 years old. And so when I got to the property, I found out what was going on. I found 12 puppies. He was breeding on the property because he had access to the backyard. And that's why it was so much whimpering at random times. So I had to go back to my attorney. I had to revise my lease to include you're not allowed to breed pets on the property. So again, a lot of pitfalls I'm going to share with you, and some you will get from other people. But just always remain inflexible, stay fluid and dynamic. You're going to learn a lot of things about your tenants and your leases as you move forward. Things will actually pop out and you'll be like, I need to add this to the lease. The next clause is subletting. Remember, I shared with you, I had a tenant. She lived on the 5th floor, beautiful view. Tenants were complaining that there was a lot of foot traffic, different people throughout the week. I couldn't understand why. This particular tenant, she did have permission to put a lockbox in front of the property. And her reasoning was she wanted her housekeeper to have access because the housekeeper would come while she was at work. It didn't pose a problem for me. But again, the tenants in the building were starting to complain about the foot traffic. So one day while I was in the area, I stopped by the property and I saw a woman at the lockbox that I did, I saw where my tenant actually placed her lockbox, and this person had a suitcase. And, I didn't think that this was part of the housekeeping team, but I wasn't sure. So I approached a person, and lo and behold, it was somebody who was renting an Airbnb from this woman for 7 to 10 days. And so I had to actually go and add subletting, no short-term rental, all of that information. That particular clause needed to get added to the lease. The third clause is access. This one's important. If you don't have this and let's say you need to get inside the apartment, if you missed any of our conversations, again, I invite you to go back and listen to them because we did cover this. You should check your apartments at least twice a year. Each time the daylight savings time change, that should be your time that you should get into your apartment, figure out the wear and tear, figure out just what's going on. You just should always get into your apartment. So if you don't have the clause about access, you could pose a problem because the tenant could say, I'm busy, I'm not home, I have company. They're going to come up with so many excuses. So I have a clause that as long as I provide you 24-hour notice, you have to give me access. The only time that I don't give permission, and this is in the lease as well, is if it's deemed as an emergency. Now, me being in the area wanting to do a regular routine inspection, that's not an emergency. I'm talking about leaks, smoke, something to that degree. That's going to give me enough reasons to go into the apartment, and I have that clause in the lease. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is by having that lease, it tells the tenant at some point I'm going to want to come in. So it puts them on notice to kind of live accordingly, so to speak. I'm not there every week or every month, but I just love to have that type of verbiage. The next clause is lease renewals. I shared with you, I always put in there that I want to have 60 days of knowing what your intentions are. And so what I do is I send notices within 60 days stating that you have to let me know by a certain time. What is your plans? Are you going to renew it? Because if you're not, I need to start marketing that unit. If you are going to stay, here's the terms. So I give them what the terms are going to be for the next term. And if they don't renew it, they can go to a month-to-month tenancy. But here's the caveat. I make that month-to-month higher than what the yearly lease would be, as a way to encourage them to sign a lease, a 1-year lease. Because month to month, I can charge more, but you don't want to be astronomical too high, because if I go to court, the judge could throw it out if I'm charging $50,000 a month. That's not pretty reasonable. But I set it a little bit above the market rent, but I make the market rent a little bit less so that they can pick and choose. And usually they want an annual lease or they're just going to leave. Now, here's the other thing. If I have a tenant, let's say that they renewed their lease or they moved in the winter, I try and make the lease, instead of the typical 12 months, I will do 18 months. Why? Because I live in the colder months. And the last thing I want is a vacancy. If this tenant decides that they're not going to renew their lease, that means I potentially have a vacant unit in December. That means it could be snow on the ground, it's cold, it's going to be a lot harder. So if I know that a lease is going to expire in December, I may offer an 18-month lease so that it can expire in the springtime. I may say I'll give you a half a month free or 1 month free if you sign through March, because then it's a lot easier to fill the unit. And let me just quickly go back about the access. Part of the access clause is so that if you decide that you don't want to renew your lease, I can allow other people to come in. Of course, I'm going to set up a schedule with you to let somebody see your apartment. But again, if I'm going into that apartment twice a year, I know if you're a good housekeeper. And if you're not, I'm not going to show that tenant. I'm probably going to show some pictures that I got before you moved in. And the only way I would know that is by coming into your unit a couple of times. So just keep that in mind. The last clause that I want to go into is you want to have a clause about being jointly and severally liable. What that means is if you have two tenants, and let's say they're roommates, one tenant pays and the other tenant doesn't pay. Well, I'm not going to evict the tenant that didn't pay. I'm going to evict both of you. So I make both of you liable for it. If there's damage done to the apartment, you're both on the hook for it. If one of you have guests and your guest damaged the apartment or the building, you're both on the hook for it. So again, it makes them think about who are they signing a lease with, because they're both responsible. Who wants an eviction or a judgment on their credit report when it's not even their fault? So again, Those are 5 clauses that I always make sure that I put in my leases. And again, as you move forward with building your portfolio, you're going to find other clauses to put inside your leases. Now, if you're renting, share with me what are some interesting clauses that's in your leases, or even if you've heard of some clauses, or if you already have your first rental property, what are some clauses that you have in your lease? I hope that this has been helpful and that you've gotten some value. If you have any questions, please leave that in the comment section. Now, if you're watching this outside of my business Facebook page, I invite you to come and join me at renardajoylive.com. That's renardajoylive.com. Now, I want you to join because my mission is to create and help informed investors, what I call legacy setters. I want to help you build your real estate arsenal so that your tool belt is strong. So if you have any questions, and if you're just joining our conversation, we're just wrapping up day 18, I invite you to go back and listen to those conversations. And if you've gotten any value, or if you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comments, and I promise I will come back and respond. So I will see you tomorrow, same time, 6 p.m. EST. Have a good night.